One is Enough by Amaka, Chapter 12. Father MacLeod had a hard time with the bishop, who was shocked, to put it mildly. "And, my lord, I cannot continue as a priest with this knowledge that I have sinned and have abandoned my sons as well. They are like me. There is no way of denying it. Even if I do, my conscience will trouble me. How am I going to live with myself for the rest of my life? I want a clean break. There is no middle way for me." The bishop was at a loss. It was the most painful decision he had had to take in all his 40 years as a priest of God and a bishop. Times had changed, and he had to move with the times. He had to grant Father MacLeod's request. There was nothing else he could do. MacLeod had done what was expected of him. He had come to confess to the bishop. That was a penance in itself. He must grant him his dispensation. Many young priests during and after the war had not lived up to expectations. There was so much laxity amongst both priests and nuns. There were many cases like Father MacLeod's, but those concerned did not handle their problems the way he had done. They had allowed the scandal to go on and had only come to the bishop when it was too late. There was the case of a priest of God who got involved with a girl during the war. He sent the girl to his mother. She had the baby and lived with the priest's mother in the village while the priest visited her from time to time. By the time it was known, the priest had already had 4 children and had to leave the priesthood. It was very scandalous, and there were attempts at a cover-up by the church. But many people knew, and the influence of the church began to diminish. Father MacLeod approached his problem admirably and maturely. Others like him who had fallen by the wayside invented one excuse or another to leave the priesthood. There was one in particular who made headlines in the newspapers, fighting the very institution that he had belonged to over 20 years. It was painful for the others who still believed, for they reasoned, and rightly too, that if one was tired of an organization or institution which one had defended for so long, one should live quietly and not disrupt that very institution. One should not incite others to revolt and cause harm. Father MacLeod and many like him argued in this vein and abhorred the writing and sayings in the news media of their colleagues who, to all intents and purposes, wanted to do what they liked. While in the priesthood, they were not allowed to do as they liked. So in this particular case, Amaka's name was never mentioned. Father MacLeod would not grant interviews with anyone when he was appointed, for he believed that the press boys would ask him embarrassing questions about his life. He wasn't sure that his secret was secret, so he was always on his guard. The bishop was sorry, but he admired Father MacLeod's courage, knowing his background. He was not just one of the priests, he was an outcast who would have died but for the church. The good bishop took note of the other aspects of the young man's transgressions. Later in the evening of the same day, Father MacLeod went to see Amaka's mother, whom he had sent for to see whether she could persuade Amaka to be his wife as soon as decency allowed. Amaka was reluctant to send the message and had told him that she was not going to change her mind. She cherished the relationship all right, but marriage, no. She was true with it. She might have considered it as a means of having children, but now that she had the twins, there was no way. It was irksome for Father MacLeod to think that he could ask to leave the priesthood because he was involved with a woman who had his twins, and the same woman refused to be his wife. He had thought that every woman's ambition was to get married, have children, and settle down with the man she loved. Amaka was proving difficult, but he would press on. Before Amaka's mother was sent for, he had already had a session with Ayo, Amaka's sister. Ayo was not happy on that particular day because her boyfriend and her number one had taken off to London without a word. If he had nothing to hide, he would not have gone so unceremoniously. However, no matter. Men were all the same. Ayo had concluded ages ago. As a young woman, she had used men as part of her outfit. She had said that a woman needed a nice man to be by her side when she was properly dressed for an outing and when one was ready to have children. one needed them for that purpose only, procreation. If they had money to go with it, all well and good. Father MacLeod was not happy at the outcome of his discussion with Ayo. He had thought that Ayo would be on his side, but Ayo was on her sister's side. "Father," she said, "I beg your pardon, Izu. I don't see you and my sister making a good pair. Let's face it, you are not of this world really. The life you are about to enter is a strange one. There are so many things you don't know yet. You are excited about the twins. Who wouldn't be? But think of your profession, your new office, and not rush things. My sister is very stubborn. She went through hell in her marriage. That hell is still at the back of her mind. Try as much as you can. She cannot forget it. She likes you as a person, but she does not want to get married again. So my advice is this: take it coolly. Get on with your job. Don't be rash. Don't leave the priesthood and things will sort themselves out in due course. That is my advice." Father MacLeod did not take the advice, of course, and so he went to the bishop and confessed all, believing that once he did that, Amaka would realize how serious he was. But that did not impress Amaka in any way. Next to Ayo was Adobe. He wanted to see her and bare his heart to her. Somehow, he preferred to talk to Adobe rather than Mike. Nigerian men talked to their fellow men in those circumstances, not to women. Father MacLeod was, of course, ignorant of the way Nigerian men behaved, not having a close friend who was not a priest. As a matter of fact, he had no friends even among his fellow priests. They envied him because of the preferential treatment he received and his good qualities. He was not prepared at all for the way Adobe treated him. Mike was busy writing endless petitions which nobody in government had time to read. Father MacLeod had advised him to lie low until he sorted things out, but he was impatient. He thought that the injustice done to him would be rectified in a month or so. Adobe, who was practical, had told him to desist from the petitions. They were all right so far. They had moved to their bungalow and she still had her job. The children were in school. Their lifestyle hadn't changed drastically. If he would use the days as a holiday and have a good rest, all would be well. Adobe found it extremely difficult to be of any use to Father MacLeod. She refused to discuss the matter. Her faith in the church was so shaken that she would not forgive Father MacLeod. He could be the head of the state tomorrow, for all she cared, but she was not going to change her attitude towards him. He had let her down so badly. As for Amaka, she called her all sorts of names. She seduced the man of God, and she would not go unpunished. She was not going to talk to Amaka into marrying Father MacLeod. She would never encourage that kind of marriage. The father who gave her Holy Communion, being the father of her best friend's children, no! It was just too much for her to take. The only person left to talk to was Amaka's mother, and he was driving to Amaka's house, this time in the daytime, to see Amaka's mother. Amaka, Ayo and their mother were waiting for Izu's arrival when Amaka again told them that she had made up her mind and would not marry Izu. "Mother, she does not love him," Ayo said in her usual way. "Who is talking about love now?" their mother said. "You children got the idea of love into your heads when you went to school and read those books." "Mother," Ayo began almost in jest, "don't tell us you did not love our father when you married him." "I will tell you frankly, I had nothing to do at all in the marriage between your father and I. It was my mother who arranged everything. I protested. I said I didn't like him, that I didn't want to marry him. But she said he was a good man and from a very good family, and that she would always be near me to help me and encourage me. I loved my mother so much that I agreed. In the first 10 years of the marriage, I had all of you, but I still did not love him. In fact, as time went on, I disliked him more and more, but I remained his wife. He knew I did not like him, but he was a very patient man. Even when I encouraged him to get another wife, he refused. I felt so guilty, but there was nothing I could do. I told my mother, but she saw nothing in my complaints. She encouraged me to trade, so I went to Onitsha and started trading in textiles. I would leave home and not return for 2 weeks. My husband did not mind. When I asked him to come over to Onitsha and live with me, he refused. He stayed at home and took care of you together with my mother. He loved my mother and she treated him like a real son, for as you know, she had no son. Then he died rather prematurely and I was left with my mother to bring you up. I think nothing of him except that he was the father of my children. There was no affection as such. Even when he died, he was no loss to me. This is the truth, so I can understand Amaka. I remember that her own circumstances are quite different from mine. So if she did not feel anything for Izu, I can understand. But Amaka, you should think of Izu's position now. You have his children now and he wants you. You have your own house and are quite independent. Your circumstances have changed drastically. You will be free. You will be financially independent of him. Your previous marriage was different. You were young, you had no money of your own, though you had a business. But now you have two lovely boys. The boys need a father. You could bring them up better if they were girls, but they are boys and they will be quite a handful for you alone. So think of Izu seriously. If you cannot make up your mind now, you can make it up in future. Say next year. You have nothing to lose. You have much more to gain. Izu drove in and parked in the garage. Amaka's mother welcomed him profusely and offered cola and drinks, which Izu took. He was relaxed among the three women. The twins were in their cots, wide awake. He did not carry them in his arms. He merely went to the cot, smiled at them, and sat down again. Then he began. Amaka's mother, I have already told the bishop about Amaka and myself. I cannot go back and unsay those things again. If Amaka does not want marriage now, she might want it some other time, but she has to make up her mind pretty soon. I am impatient. It has been a difficult decision for me to take, and having taken it, I cannot go back. I have left the priesthood, and what use is this action of mine if Amaka refuses to be my wife? I don't want half measures. I know of other priests who are involved like me and still remain in the priesthood. Amaka wants me to do that, but I cannot do it because I am different. Nobody spoke after he had spoken, not even Amaka's mother. There was a mild threat in his words, and when he was gone, the three women looked at each other blankly. Amaka's mother slept badly. As for Amaka, she slept very well. She had made her decision and that was that. Early in the morning, Amaka's mother woke her up and spoke softly to her for over 10 minutes about protection by men, about her own life without a husband and all that. Izu was a good man who wanted her desperately and she should consider him. Izu had no one in the way of relations who would bother Amaka if she became his wife. Amaka would be in an enviable position as the wife of a federal commissioner. She would have contracts and everyone would bend over backwards to do her will. Amaka should not shy away from marriage because of her previous experiences. Izu was a man of God and would not let her down. He was responsible and Amaka would never regret the marriage. Amaka listened, and when her mother finished, she said nothing but went to the telephone and called Ayo and asked her to come post haste. Just ask mother why she woke me up at 5 this morning. Let me say it again. I am through with marriage. I am not going to marry Izu. Have I made myself clear, mother? Amaka's mother's back was up. Amaka, who are you talking to in that way? Now listen to me, you stupid ass. Money indeed. How much are you worth? Just tell me and I shall tell you how much I am worth. When I finished with you, then you will know who is your mother. Now listen carefully to me. You will marry Izu. I will not die until you marry him. So get it straight. Ayo, you are my witness. Amaka will marry Izu. Whether she likes it or not? Ayo asked. Yes, whether she likes it or not. I am your mother and what I say is what you will do. Don't you have any sense? Didn't you hear him? Amaka, didn't you know he was a priest of God when you slept with him? He was only good as a lover, as a man who arranged contracts for you, and not good enough to be your husband. I thought you used to spend your money on foolish men who deceived you. Now this man has given you such lovely boys, and you have the guts to say, "I will not marry him." You will marry him. He has left the priesthood for your sake. You will not disappoint him. You will ruin him, and I will not stand by and let my daughter ruin such a good man. Where is that driver? Has he come? I have my car. I can take you where you want to go, said Ayo, who knew her mother better than Amaka did. Their mother would carry out that threat, even if Izu changed his mind. Then take me to Izu's house. Mother! I said take me to his house. You heard me? I didn't have water in my mouth when I spoke to you. To Izu's house? Or do you want me to take a taxi? Mother, please sit down and let's get our bearings correct before we take a false step. Are you taking me or not? You know I can hire a car. Are you bluffing? Ayo smiled in spite of the seriousness of the whole thing. As for Amaka, she said nothing. Nani was somewhere in the kitchen. She heard everything but pretended not to hear. I am going to show you that I am your mother and that you do what I say because what I say is the right thing at all times. I never make mistakes. And with this, she got herself into the back seat of her daughter's car and planted herself very solidly there. You want to make me your driver? Ayo said, trying to release the tension a bit. You never know when one is serious. Go on, start your car. I wonder whether they will let us in this early in the morning, Ayo said. When I tell them that I am Amaka's mother, what are you talking about? Ayo drove on. She wondered what her mother was going to say to Izu. She felt for Amaka. But come to think of it, she thought, Amaka could have a divorce if she fails in this marriage. Her mother was right in saying that she has everything to gain and nothing to lose. She understood Amaka's point of view, of course. The old adage that once bitten, twice shy was correct in Amaka's case. She could give it a try though, especially as this case was a very special one. Yet she had her doubts. The marriage was not going to work. She knew it because Amaka was not going to work hard for it. They had to announce their names at the gate, and then the watchman threw the gate open to them. It was done in such a way that Ayo could not help thinking that the gateman had been briefed. They were shown into the sitting room and sat down. Something pricked Ayo as she sat down. She felt around and discovered that it was an earring. She quickly put it in her handbag. What is that? Her mother's ever-watchful eye had caught the movement. Oh, just a match I was using to pick my ear. Then Izu came out of his bedroom and welcomed them heartily. He offered them drinks and Amaka's mother said she wanted some schnapps. Mother, he said in his sweet way, and that was the first time he had called her mother. Ayo, my daughter, did you hear him? My son, you have called me mother. I am your mother, my son. Mother, I have no schnapps. I live the life of a man without a wife. A bachelor's life, as the English say. All right, whiskey will do, but schnapps is better. A new bottle of whiskey was brought in on a tray by Izu himself. Amaka's mother poured libations, implying that both families had been joined together already, and this pleased Izu very much. Like a well-brought-up person, he waited for his would-be mother-in-law to start. Ayo sat glumly, as if she was merely a spectator. When do you want to marry my daughter? Ayo sat up. She was startled. Even Izu was taken aback. But he wanted Amaka, he needed her. So he said, as soon as she agrees to marry me, we shall have the native ritual first, then allow a reasonable time before the church ceremony. You know it all. We have to give people time to recover from their shock over Amaka and I. This is a society that we all belong to, and we have to recognize the norm. So she has come around at last. I must thank you, mother. I knew you would be on my side, and once I had you on my side, I knew all would be well. He went into the other room because the telephone rang, and when he came out, Ayo and her mother were already standing, ready to leave. I shall come this evening, Izu said. I am wanted in the office, otherwise we could have had breakfast together. Ayo said nothing to her mother until they reached Amaka's house. She was not in. Nani and the twins were not in either. So Ayo drove her mother to her own house, and there she saw the message left by Amaka. She had taken off to Onitsha to see about the building. She would be away for a week. The key to her house was with her maid. Then in that case, drive me to the airport, said Amaka's mother. Don't you want to get home first? What for? I have my money with me. I am not going home. She was driven to the airport. Ayo said nothing. For one thing, she knew that Amaka had not gone to Onitsha. Amaka was in Lagos. She did not know where exactly, but she was in Lagos. Buy the ticket then, her mother shouted. Ayo went meekly and bought a single ticket to Benin. She gave her 50 naira for the taxi fare and prayed that the flight would not be cancelled. Amaka thinks she is clever. I'm going to tell her that I am cleverer, she said. Ayo said nothing. She was preoccupied with her own thoughts. The earring. Who was it? No, she should not behave in that way. After all, girls and ladies, mothers and grandmothers had visited Izu when he was just a priest. Now that he was a federal commissioner, he would receive more visitors. Then the thought hit her. It was more like a revelation than a thought. Just as their mother was fighting tooth and nail to have Amaka marry Izu, so were all mothers who knew Izu fighting tooth and nail to marry their daughters to him if they could. It was a matter of competition. Their mother was the first to realize this fact. Izu had gone high in the marriage market with his youth, his position, his charm, and now the frock to say he would have no peace. The sooner he got married, the better. The girls would continue to plague him, but at least her own sister would be the first in the queue. Anything could happen afterwards, and the flight was announced. That's your flight, mother. She nudged her mother. She got up. Let's go, she said. Go where? Ayo asked in desperation. To your home, she said. Aren't you traveling anymore? No. And she was very serious. And you made me spend my money to buy you a ticket and... I have not used it. You have the boarding pass, which cannot be returned. Enough of your jesting. I'm not traveling anymore. Can I have my 50 naira back? It's all I had in my handbag. When we get home,